So Nalini, we ready to begin?
I can start with roll call, sure. Michael Lillquist,
Here.
Holly Huffman,
Here.
Daniel Hamill,
Here.
Skip Williams,
Here.
Lisa Anderson,
Here.
Christina Michelle Martins.
Here.
So all present except Councilmember Stone excused.
Thank you again. I'm sorry for being a little bit late. I'm sharing in the absence of Council President Stone, who will try to join this meeting later on. I have two announcements of upcoming meetings. On March 21st at 6 p.m., the Bellingham City Council will hold its first quarterly town hall meeting remotely via Zoom. The first town hall meeting will be devoted to community voices on climate action. You may join the meeting by visiting cob.org and look under Town Hall to find the webinar ID. In addition, on March 23rd at 6:30 p.m., the Bellingham City Council will hold the annual Lake Whatcom Joint Councils and Commissions meeting remotely via Zoom in conjunction with the Whatcom County Council and the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District. Again, you may join that meeting by Zoom, and please look online to find the webinar ID and the passcode. The first item on our agenda is the mayor's report. Mayor Fleetwood.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I've got just a couple of things to report on, and but first, an appointment that requires, no, it's information only. It's just an appointment of William Lidicott to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission, representing the Fairhaven neighborhood. Information only. Brief overview of the presentation that was provided today regarding RVs. Bellingham's Police Lieutenant Claudia Murphy and others provided an update this afternoon on the city's actions to clean up abandoned vehicles and RVs parked longer than allowed on Bellingham streets, which of course, as we all know, is 72 hours. Those of us that attended the meeting today. Abandoned vehicles, recreational vehicles, and junk and hulk vehicles along various streets have generated concerns and complaints about litter and sewage, drug use, crime, and other public health and safety concerns. A particular concern have been those concentrated downtown at Civic Field and in several neighborhoods. And I just encourage anybody who's interested in this topic to view the video recording posted on the city meeting site at meetings.cob.org. And I want to just give special thanks to Lieutenant Murphy and the police and the public works teams who have been working on these issues. Also, just a brief reminder relating to the chief of police selection process. We are getting to a concentrated point in that process. And just a reminder to people that are interested that there's a public forum to meet the semifinal candidates for Bellingham Police Chief, which is scheduled for this coming Thursday at 5:30, March 17th. And the forum will be recorded for later viewing. The recording and all details about how to participate are posted on the city's Engage Bellingham page, where you'll also find more details about our search for a new police chief. So you can go to engagebellingham.org. Again, that will be viewable for people at 5:30 on Thursday, and they'll also be able to watch it the next day and the following day. It's going to be up for, I guess it would be that following Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I believe. St. Patrick's Day Parade, speaking of March 17th, this Thursday is St. Patrick's Day, and this past Saturday was the downtown parade. And it was, I went to it. It was really fun. Hopefully some of you had an opportunity to go. It was nice for the first time in seemingly a long time to see people out along the streets on Chestnut. Started down at the waterfront, marched down Granary Avenue, and they took a right on Chestnut, or on Roeder, I guess, and then went up to Chestnut. There's actually a rather large concentrated crowd between Bay Street and Railroad, and a big crowd was hanging out around the Depot Market Square. So it was was a fun thing. I got to be the Grand Marshal for the parade 2 years ago, and then of course it was canceled. So I didn't get to. This year, the Grand Marshal was Health Director Erica Lautenbach. So it was just wonderful to see so many people come out. Great to see our community cautiously returning and attending gatherings and having fun and supporting the bars and restaurants and other things downtown. So I thought I'd just make reference to that. Back to you, Mr. Lillquist.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go on to reports from regular committee meetings that occurred earlier today. The first of those committees was the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee this morning, which I chaired. I'll report out 3 items from that. The first of those was a report from the Lake Whatcom Policy Group meeting, which occurs quarterly. The Lake Whatcom Policy Group, consisting of representatives from the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District, the Whatcom County Council, the Sudden Valley Community Association, and the Bellingham City Council, meets regularly to discuss policy issues regarding Lake Whatcom. Public Works and Natural Resources Committee Chair, that is myself, provided a briefing for discussion this morning. Please go to that video to look at what we discussed. I outlined further agenda items for the rest of the year that we will be discussing, and reviewed the findings of the buildable land supply and issues relating to forestry practices in the Lake Whatcom watershed. That was for information only. The second item was a bid award for the Bellingham Central Library freight elevator upgrades. The Bellingham Central Library freight elevator upgrades project includes new safety and equipment improvements regarding the existing elevators, fire alarming systems, electrical circuits, paneling, and new paint in the hoistway. Bids were publicly open on January 26th of 2022. RC Ziegler Company Incorporated was responsible bidder at $366,373.12, including sales tax, which was just a teeny bit above the engineer's estimate of $348,160. This afternoon, or this morning, actually, it was discussed that this was one action in a series of improvement and upgrades to the main library downtown, some of which have been completed and others which will be occurring in coming years. This morning, the committee unanimously recommended approval of the bid, and I so move.
Second.
The bid has been seconded by Councilmember Hamel. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of awarding the bid signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously 6-1 with 1 excused absence. The next item in committee was electrification of transportation grant from the Washington State Department of Commerce. The city of Bellingham plans to increase electric vehicle charging infrastructure citywide as part of its commitment to addressing climate change. As part of project number 3 in the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, the city proposes to install 45 dual plug charging stations for a total of 90 charging stations altogether on city-owned or city-managed property, including public parks, rights of way, and city facilities. The Parks Board has approved the proposed EV charging stations that are located in the city parks. This project is in part funded by a $1.5 million grant called the Electrification of Transportation Grant from Washington State Department of Commerce, as well as a $500,000 in local matching grants from the Voter-Approved Transportation Fund. The action this afternoon was to recommend approving of that grant. In addition, in the package, it shows a map of the proposed locations for those charging stations, and the committee unanimously recommended approval of the grant, and I so move.
Second.
I'm not sure who seconded. I'm going to say Lisa because your voice was louder. Nonetheless, we have a motion before us on the table. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, then it passes unanimously. That's 6-1 with 1 excused absence. That concludes the committee report for Public Works and Natural Resources. Another committee to meet this morning was Community and Economic Development, which is chaired by Councilmember Holly Huffman.
Thank you. So today we had one agenda item. It was an introduction to the 2022-2023 Consolidated Action Plan for Housing and Services. In preparation for the 2022-2023 Consolidated Action Plan to be submitted to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in mid-May, staff presented on the Housing and Services Program, including discussion of ongoing projects and programs, uses and limitations of the affordable housing sales tax, discussion of efforts focused on families with children, and a report on community development advisory board recommendations with the proposed adoption of the full consolidated annual action plan with resolution, and that will happen on May 9th. For more information on that, it is an interesting start to understanding the consolidated plan and the process. You can find our video at meetings.cub.org. Or is it .com? Can't remember. I've typed it in so many times. But that presentation was for information and discussion only. With that, end of committee report.
Thank you, Holly. The main address for the City of Bellingham is cub.org. The next committee was the Committee of the Whole, which met at this afternoon. We had 3 regular items. I will report those out now. They were chaired by Councilor Stone. The first was a discussion of in-person council meetings. As council contemplates returning to in-person council meetings, concerns were raised regarding social distancing, capacity, vaccination max requirements, among other issues. The council reviewed a memorandum which seeks to address those concerns so the council can evaluate if and when we will return to in-person meetings. This afternoon, the discussion centered around a balancing of public health concerns and also concerns for good public process. Given the fact that the governor's order on open public meetings still requires us to have a virtual component, that is that we remain all virtual or a hybrid meeting of virtual, and given the ongoing uncertainty as to whether or not the loosening in the mask mandates will go well or will have another setback, the City Council decided to take no action at this point and to return on April 11th to reevaluate opening up public meetings to either hybrid or all in-person meetings. I think there's no more to include on that. Oh, at the April 11th meeting, I believe we have requested, or the administration suggested, that we include either Whatcom County Health Director Erica Lautenbach or similar public health officials to help us in making our decision. I think one of the common concerns is that we don't open up meetings to a hybrid and then going back to all virtual. We wanted to open the doors and have them stay open. For more details on that, you can review the actual video of the meeting. The next was an update on RVs, in particular RVs parking and the 72-hour parking rule. We had Bellingham Police Lieutenant Claudia Murphy with us to provide an update on what the police department and public works have been doing in regards to various RVs parked in Bellingham streets, and in particular any that are violating the parking rules and are subject to enforcement actions. It was a lengthy presentation and an even lengthier discussion. Several issues discussed is that there's a diversity of individuals who are experiencing homelessness, each with their own stories, and that not all people who are living in cars or RVs respond to the rules or behave similarly. It was indicated that the primary efforts with regard to violations of the parking rule are simply to get people to move their vehicles or to otherwise come into compliance. We discussed ways in which help is offered to people who are, for some reason, unwilling or unable to move their vehicle. Maybe they just need some gas or some other forms of assistance to help them move. In addition, we discussed ways in which these RVs parking streets lead to problems with human waste disposal and trash disposal, and the various ways the city has offered help for free to help with trash removal and to help with proper waste disposal. One of the other issues to discuss is whether or not the 72-hour parking rule is appropriate. I think it was generally agreed that the 72-hour parking rule itself is not the problem, but rather the particular behaviors of certain individuals who, according to Lieutenant Murphy's report, some people are unwilling to comply with the rules, even if they can comply with the rules, whereas others are willing and able to stay within the 72-hour parking limit, which simply just requires people to regularly move their vehicle if indeed they are living in a vehicle on public streets. That was for information only, and there was no action suggested or taken. Third item was an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget, which would increase expenditures using the American Rescue Plan Act funding to support the local child care industry. We have an ordinance in our packet to amend the budget. The American Rescue Plan Act awarded the city a total of $21 million. Of that amount, the city council has allocated $6 million for economic recovery, with an emphasis on both tourism and childcare. Of that $6 million, the city has appropriated already $3.7 million in the 2021-22 biennial budget. This afternoon, staff recommended the city use an additional $1 million to perform three functions. One, to retain and expand additional childcare centers. Two, to create programs to assist with workforce retention and expansion. And three, invest in additional business stabilization strategies for childcare users. It's been over a year and a half since the city of Bellingham initially used CARES Act dollars to support childcare operators and staff. And the recommendation and conclusion is that more help was needed at this time. This afternoon, one of the things that was discussed is that this proposal is actually part of a $3 million effort, $1 million from the city of Bellingham and $2 million from Whatcom County to help support childcare and families and workers who rely on childcare. Of that amount, 2.2 million will be in stabilization grants to the childcare operators. 140,000 of it will be in vouchers to families who need childcare, and around $600,000 will be for professional development for the providers and the business operators to help them remain viable. This afternoon, the Committee of the Whole recommend approval of the ordinance, and I so move.
Second.
I'm not sure who said that. I'm going to give it to Dan. This is actually harder when you're doing it virtually. We have a motion before us and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I spoke to this earlier today, but I'm in full support of this. But because I work at Whatcom Community College, and some of the funding will go to scholarships to students in the early childhood education, I recused myself from voting for this. So just to explain to the community members why I'll be abstaining. I just want to avoid a conflict of interest.
Any further comments or discussion? Okay, if not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the budget ordinance appropriating $1 million additional to support childcare and the childcare industry in Bellingham and Whatcom County signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed and abstentions?
Aye.
So that's 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 excused absence. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for staff for keeping on that very important issue. The next item is approval of meeting minutes. Ms. Margaitis, I don't have that in front of me. We do have some meeting minutes to approve. Can you tell me the date for those?
Yes, it was the February 28th.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move approval.
Second.
The motion to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. The next item is old or new business. Is there old or new business? I have one item of new business. I'm sorry I'm talking so much in this meeting, but one of the things that we ask council members to do is report out from their appointments to other boards and bodies. I and Holly Huffman and Mayor Fleetwood serve on the board of WTA. I'd like to let people know that WTA has approved its first ever 20-year long-range plan, the WTA 2040. We've been getting by with shorter range plans. This is a long-term visioning document that helps guide investments for transit. Recently, it was noted that WTA and other transit agencies have received substantial support through the pandemic with federal relief. And so WTA is in an enviable position of actually not being in debt and being in a position to invest in the future. In addition, the Olympia legislature also approved the Move Ahead Washington plan, which includes additional monies to WTA and other transit agencies. And so we will be using the WTA 2040 document to be guiding our future investments. These include not only increases in service, but also an emphasis on the equity of that service. The goal is to increase the amount of service, not only generally speaking, but at a greater rate in areas where jobs are needed and where transit-dependent populations live. We're looking also at innovations such as more on-demand based systems for transit agency and dedicated corridors such as bus rapid transit. I would recommend that people go online and search for WTA 2040. There's a website set up for WTA 2040. I think it's WTA2040.org, but do a web search on that. You can find that document and other accompanying documents on the a 1.5-year long process that WTA used to develop that strategic plan. Any other items that are old or new? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I just looked at my notes and reminded myself I was going to cover something at the last meeting and failed to do it. About a couple of weeks ago, I went out on a police ride with Officer Josh Danke and Officer Todd Furtick. And so I spent about 10 hours out, 5 hours with each officer, and I got to see just a wide ranging of their services and professionalism. And I wanted to personally thank them and the Bellingham Police Department for opening up their staff and their vehicles to take us out so that we have a better understanding of the services and have that ability to have conversations. I was really impressed because I did see responding to from mental health to catalytic converters being stolen and investigated and several other items. So always impressed with the service and the care that they were providing in all those situations. And then I also wanted to make note, because we have received a lot of comments about the Bessie Swords timber sale. And I want to thank administration that they did reach out to DNR. And so Friday morning, several of us, along with some city staff and DNR, will be meeting on site to go through there for a review. So hopefully at the next meeting, I'll have something else to share, but just to let the public know that we're still working on doing due diligence to examine what's happening with that tract of land and communicating with DNR.
Thank you. Any other old or new business? Councilmember Williams.
Yes. I'm hitting a button the wrong way. Along as we're making announcements about some of our outside assignments on a little bit of a lighter side, I just wanted to quickly announce that on April 23rd, the Mount Baker Theater will be celebrating their 95th year of existence. And in that will be a performance by the actress Kristen Chenoweth. So I just wanted to make that quick little announcement. And if you want to know anything more about it, just go to the Mount Baker website, which is mountbakertheater.com. And you can find out everything there is to know about that celebration. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other items that are old and new? Okay, I have one more item. I've brought this up with some council members And I now need to bring it forward because, as we all know, Open Public Meetings Act requirements don't allow us to discuss issues out of a meeting. So to bring this any further, I need to talk about it openly. This has to do with the issue of mailbox theft and the fact that many of our older apartment buildings do not comply with new U.S. Postal Code regulations, which require apartments to have safe and locking mailboxes. I've been looking into the issue of mailbox theft. It doesn't just occur in locking mailboxes. It can occur on your doorstep. It's a growing problem. But one possible thing the city of Bellingham could do is adopt a new regulation which gives owners of older apartment buildings some amount of time to come to compliance with the current regulations, which all newer apartment buildings have to meet, which is simply to provide safe and locking mailboxes. This would be a code amendment. This would require a staff time and investigation. And at this point, my impression is that there's a mixed opinions among whether or not this is the sort of the direction the city council wants to go and how we want to slot this into the administration's work plan. So I'd like to bring it up right now and sort of take the temperature and see if enough of the council members are interested in going forward in assigning to administration an evaluation of how we might bring about this code change. Again, the code change would be to require older apartment buildings without safe locking mailboxes to, in a certain amount of time, install safe locking mailboxes. Is there any interest in discussing this item? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I actually fully support bringing something forward and asking staff to help write it. Much like the leash length that I had brought up, I didn't put a specific timeline. It was just, asking parks to take it back, review it, kind of bring it back with some of the code amendments over the next 6 months. We do these little cleanup tweaks periodically that they could be bunched together. I always thought this would be a good placement under the rental licensing to do an update there, but staff may identify a better chapter. One of the reasons why I was supporting this is we did have an early conversation in the summer about it, and I went to work on a different project at the time, but Happy Valley has a lot of mail theft. I've personally 3 times, and I live in New York, have picked up mail that was stolen from mailboxes in the Happy Valley area. And so some of the people in our community who are least able to deal with mail theft are the ones that are the greatest impact. And those are the people who live in some of the older apartment complexes where perhaps they're not the highest income, but you get your utility bill stolen or a credit card statement stolen and you miss a bill, it impacts your credit rating. It impacts the potential of having to pay late fees, and they may not be in a position to be able to afford that. So I really think this is something that is one of those smaller lifts that could have a huge impact on some of our more economically vulnerable community members. And so I'm glad you're bringing this forward. I fully support it. I hope other council members will look at it in light of, hopefully it's not a big lift, but it could have a dramatic positive impact for community members who are perhaps more economically vulnerable in our community.
Is there other interest among council members to supporting this? So again, this would be a motion to basically ask the administration to do further work on this issue. It would be something added to their workload. Is there any further interest?
Can I just offer a suggestion?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Councilmember Lillquist, perhaps just so that the entire council could have a more informed consideration of this topic, perhaps we can just put some information together and bring it back at a next meeting, and it can be then considered with a bit more information from relevant staff at the city. We could offer some contextualization around the given work plans we've got, And then you can have a conversation on it. And if a majority of the council then gives direction at that time, I think it would just be more respectful towards the process that we've got. So I would just ask that we be able to give a little bit of more information before people vote on it. It's an entirely worthy thing for council to consider.
Sure. My awkwardness is that I can't have a discussion except here on camera, which is why I'm bringing it up now publicly. I have spoken with Mr. Nabafeld. He's aware of the issues. He actually pointed me to the U.S. Postal Code regulations that new buildings comply with. He would certainly be a great resource in your administration to provide some of that contextualization you talked about. If you're willing to do that on your own, I think it'd be maybe good to hear if there's any interest beyond that of myself and Council Member Anderson for you to do that work. Councilmember Hamilton.
I support the mayor's process that he just articulated.
Councilmember Martins.
In whatever method we need to do it, I support that we move forward in trying to secure mailboxes for our community members.
Council Member Huthman.
I am in general very interested in hearing more about having a further discussion about it and hearing from staff.
Okay, and Councilmember Williams.
Having had to face this a number of years ago in my neighborhood, I would be more than interested in hearing more from the mayor's office and getting some more context around this issue. So let's move forward that way.
Okay, sound like there's interest. Seth, I think probably a good thing for me to do is send you some more information on this topic. You can then work with your staff and we can schedule that at your staff's convenience to bring forward exactly what this proposal might actually entail, what it could accomplish, and then the council could decide whether or not it's important enough to have you add to staff's work plan. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other old or new business? Okay, seeing none, I will then go on to report out from this afternoon's executive session. The executive session this afternoon, we met on 3 issues. 2 of those were on property acquisition. In both cases, staff provided information on a potential property acquisition for information discussion only. In neither case was any action taken. The third was a matter had to do with labor relations. Staff provided information on our collective bargaining agreements. In this case, I would entertain a motion from a council member to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Guild of Pacific Northwest Employees, Local 1937, with the following terms. This would be a 2-year contract beginning January of 2022 through December 31st of 2023. On the issue of wages and compensation, effective January 21st, there would be a 3% cost of living increase, a 2% retention increase, and a 2% market increase for a total of 7% increase in the base rate pay. Effective January 1st of 2023, there would then be a 2.5% COLA and a 1.75% market increase for a total of 4.25% increase in base rate pay. And also beginning in January of 2023, a 1% new service quality step increase for employees with 15 years of service. In addition, for medical insurance, the agreement includes maintaining the current collective bargaining agreement language, which would increase the city's contribution of medical health care by 5% in each of 2022 and 2023. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I move adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams, second by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Skip, you have your hand up. Is that for discussion?
No, it was up to make the motion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. The motion is to approve a collective bargaining agreement between the city and Local 1937. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that passes unanimously 6-0 with one excused absence. The next item is the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second,
Second.
We have a motion before us, moved by Councilmember Hamel, seconded by Councilmember Huffman. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? That passes 6-0 with one excused absence. We now move on to final consideration of ordinances. There are 2 ordinances to consider. Ms.
Agenda Bill 23241, an ordinance amending Bellingham Municipal Code, Chapter 7.04.030 and 8.04.070 regarding keeping dogs and animals under control in parks.
Move third and final.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve third and final. Roll call, please.
Holly Huffman,
Aye.
Daniel Hamel,
Aye.
Skip Williams,
Aye.
Lisa Anderson,
Aye.
Michael Lillquist,
Aye.
Christina Michelle Martins.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0 with one excused. Agenda Bill 23279, an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget, increasing expenditures and adding positions to establish a sanitation and solid waste division in the Public Works Department.
Move third and final.
Second.
We have a motion before us for third and final. Roll call, please.
Christina Michelle Martins,
Aye.
Michael Lillquist,
Aye.
Lisa Anderson,
Aye.
Daniel Hamel,
Aye.
Skip Williams,
Aye.
Holly Huffman.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0, one excused, Hannah Stone.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes all the business for the Bellingham City Council, unless there's any further business. Hearing none, thank you for bearing with me. Council Member Stone will be back in her regular position in our next meeting. This was a lot of talking on my part. If y'all want to be present, you got to be comfortable listening to yourself talk an awful lot. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good week. This meeting is adjourned.